Do you ever feel like you should be feeling something, but nothing's there? It's not that you don't have any emotions, it's like you just don't know what they are. That experience happens a lot in a condition that is known as alexithymia. And today we're going to talk about what alexithymia is, what happens in our brain to cause it, also what can happen in our life to cause it, and of course, the ways that we can overcome it, because there are tools we can use. If you're new here, my name is Kati Morton and I'm a licensed therapist. And on my channel, my entire goal is to educate and empower you. So if you're struggling with things like people pleasing, feeling burnt out, or just feeling stuck in your life, you're in the right place. Please hit subscribe because each and every week I bring you videos offering tools and techniques to help you feel better tomorrow. Now let's jump back into today's video, starting off with what is alexithymia. I have a bunch of notes, so I want to make sure I get this right. Alexithymia is defined as someone who has significant difficulties in recognizing, describing, and distinguishing one's own emotions. It's almost like, when you feel like something is just off, but you can't quite put your finger on it? Those of us with alexithymia feel that a lot. It's like we have this discomfort in our body maybe, or everybody around us is expressing a certain emotional experience and we just aren't sure what it is. We can't identify it. Again, because alexithymia means we have difficulty in recognizing, describing, and distinguishing our emotions. So hold on to that definition as we go through this, because that will kind of guide our conversation. The first interesting thing about alexithymia is that it is found in roughly 10% of the population. Now, I know 10% might not feel like a big number, but it's a huge number. And because this so deeply impacts us and our relationships, I thought it was really important to dig deeper, to understand what happens in our life and in our body to cause this. So first up is our body, our brain. What happens in an alexithymic brain to make it so hard for us to distinguish our own emotions? And what research suggests is that it's linked to altered activity in two critical brain regions: the anterior cingulate cortex and the insula. Now, the anterior cingulate cortex, it's responsible for error detection, decision making, and here's a big important one, emotion regulation. And the insula plays a critical role in processing bodily sensations, emotions, and social cues. So you can see how these two parts of our brain could affect our ability to, going back to our definition of alexithymia, recognize, describe, and distinguish our emotions. And I thought that was really interesting, because what that tells me is that it's not that our emotions don't exist or that these signals don't exist. It's that it's happening and our brain just can't process it. Just like any mental health condition, we can't just point to one cause and say that is for sure the only reason that we have developed this condition. And the same goes for alexithymia. Obviously, there's altered activity in those two critical brain regions, but on top of that, they found a connection with language, because language plays a critical role in our development of emotions, in the way that we communicate about them. And through their research, they found that those without a rich emotional vocabulary scored higher on alexithymia scales. And they even connected it to people with language impairments, like those with developmental language disorder and traumatic brain injuries. They also scored higher on alexithymia scales because they didn't have the words to put to how they felt. And again, remember, alexithymia is defined, going back to our definition, as having difficulties in recognizing, describing, and distinguishing our own emotions. There are several promising interventions, and those are mindfulness practices, emotional granularity training, and targeted cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. Starting off with mindfulness. For those with alexithymia, it can be incredibly helpful to slow down, to tap in, and to start to recognize maybe what our bodily sensations are. Are our shoulders really tight? Do we find ourselves gritting our teeth? Are we stressed out, right? Are we able to slowly connect the fact that, hey, my shoulders really feel tense and I find my breath is shortened when I am also really worried about something, when there's a stressful situation at work or school? But we wouldn't know that if we didn't first tap in. And so they find mindful practices to be one of the first best steps for those of us with alexithymia, to just start trying to recognize, slowing down, giving ourselves maybe that extra beat to process the experience. But moving right along to the second thing that they find to be really helpful is emotional granularity training. What this encourages us to do is that instead of using broad terms like I feel bad, I feel sad, I feel mad, those all rhyme too, it's kind of funny. But instead of using those terms, we try to maybe practice differentiating between disappointed or overwhelmed and irritated. Those are all different, but they might feel somewhat similar. And the feelings wheel could be a great resource here. You just go to feelingswheel.com. And the way you utilize the feelings wheel is by starting in the middle. You'll see that there are a few emotions there. And as you move outward in the circle, the emotion words get more and more granular, meaning more and more specific. Right in the middle, we could say like, I'm angry or I'm sad. And that's a great place to start. But then we want to try to move out to the next ring. Okay, so I feel sad. So in that sadness, this is why I love the feelings wheel. It shows you, okay, under sadness, which of those other ones, those other words maybe feels more correct. Doing emotional granularity training not only allows us to identify our own emotions and helps us get better at making them more clear and specific, but then it gives us the language needed to express it to those in our lives. And that can deepen our relationships and our connection with others. So it's really, really powerful. And the final tool is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. This technique is effective because it allows us to combine both cognitive or thought-based and behavioral strategies to help us identify our distorted thinking and better understand how our thoughts influence our emotional and physical responses. And what I mean by that is that a therapist could guide us to realize that a racing heart could be categorized as like anxiety or fear, but also could be a sign of excitement. And CBT will allow us to see where we may have this like pattern of assuming something, saying that like a racing heart always means danger, when in fact it could be excitement. And I know that maybe sounds a little granular or a little specific, but that's the entire point, is to better help us recognize where we have these patterns of assuming a bodily sensation equates to something because we had that one experience that we were finally able to identify, and now all of those types of sensations are linked to that. Alexithymia can sometimes feel like a wall between us and our emotions. But what the research proves to me is that we can overcome it. Through mindfulness practices, emotional granularity training, and CBT, we can get better at identifying and expressing our emotional states. Even simple daily practices like taking a beat to check in with your body, spending 5 minutes journaling, can all make a huge difference. I know progress can feel slow at times, but stick with it because it can and will get better. But I want to hear from you. Have you experienced alexithymia symptoms? Do you sometimes struggle to identify what you feel and just end up saying okay or numb? Let me know in the comments and what's helped you overcome it, because maybe there are other tools and tips that can help other people in our community. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you next time.